Sometimes your best laid plans fall through. This is true in forestry like anywhere else. This property belongs to a client of mine who's been managing this timber since the 90s. We have done 2 timber sales in here, as well as spending many hours with our chainsaws culling the rough trees. There was always good timber here, but over time we have transformed the marginal sections into some pretty nice stands of hardwood saw timber. Then the wind and hailstorm hit. The family lives on the premises. The wife described waking up around 11 at night to hear a freight train roll by where there were no tracks. There were loud concussive sounds as tree trunks snapped in half. Terrifying to her, yet somehow the kids slept through it all. Our first walkthrough was disheartening. You could see from the road that some damage was done. You hope that it won't amount to much, but the further we went, the more extensive the damage was revealed to be. The ash, maple, and cherry had grown so tall, giving the wind that much more of a lever against the ground. They tipped out the entire root mass. Toppled trees put their weight on their neighbors, dropping them into the next ones down, and so on, leaving you with a grisly pile of splintered dominoes. We discovered that, however it may have seemed, it was not a tornado that struck the property. A funnel cloud would have left half the fallen trees pointed one way, half pointed the other, on either side of a constrained corridor. These were all pointed in the same direction, with not much consistency to the damage. Now, this land belongs to somebody who has a great deal of passion for forestry, loves his land, and seeing this had to be hard on him. He and I have done many sales over the years, here and elsewhere. But his decision of when and how to log has always been a very measured one. I have done salvage sales in tornado-hit areas. It isn't fun. Just walking over, under, and around the limbs and trunks to measure them is a tiring obstacle course. It's easy to overlook some because of the difficulty getting around. It can be hard to find a buyer for sales like this. Your maples have a short shelf life in the summer heat once they're down. If you don't get them out quickly, the sugars in the sap will feed a fungus that stains the log, reducing its grade and value. It's also fairly treacherous cutting and skidding blowdowns. They're laying all around, the trunk wood is under tensions and torsions that can be hard for the cutter to calculate. And that big root ball suddenly flops back into the ground when cut free. As if logging weren't already dangerous enough. The way to go would be to sell to an outfit that uses a feller buncher. It can manipulate trees while the operator is safe in the cab, topping them and cutting to log length for the skidder. The downside to this is the large amount of ground impact that you get from mechanized harvesters. One buncher typically feeds 2 big grapple skidders. You wind up driving over almost every square foot of soil. This is a problem where we have had so much success regenerating young maple and cherry seedlings. They'd get damaged and we'd have to start all over with a new cohort. So good decisions are made with good information, and I was hired to tabulate how much money a salvage cut would bring. I discovered a bunch of things while doing the cruise. As devastating as the damage seemed on our first walk, I found there weren't many places where it was total. There was a hit and miss element to the swath. Originally, I guessed that we would be looking at harvesting about 100,000 board feet of saw logs, which locally is considered a good-sized sale. You can't just leave that kind of cash value to feed the fungi and bark beetles, but I only found 1/3 of that footage lying prone. This disaster also came at a time when timber stumpage prices were low. And when you consider that blowdown sales usually bring about 60 to 70 cents on the dollar compared to the same timber still standing, we found that it wasn't an enormous amount of money to retrieve from this mess. My client decided to leave the dead trees lying where they were. This isn't what 95% of my clients would have done, nor is it what I would do if it were my land. but his circumstances and woodland management philosophies inform this decision. I'll give you an example to clue you in. On this same landowner's property, he has a fair amount of good ash timber that's mature and ready to go. We're in the latter stages of the emerald ash borer infestation here in western New York, an invasive bug that, if evidence proves, will ultimately decimate all species of ash in North America. My client read up on the chestnut blight that has mostly eradicated that species 100 years ago, in much the same fashion. Landowners were quick to do a total harvest of chestnut ahead of the blight to earn what they could before the trees were gone. It was also surmised that removing trees would slow the spread of the blight, to no avail. In retrospect, biologists have conjectured that leaving a larger population of chestnut might have led to a cohort of disease-resistant trees, allowing to rehabilitating that species that much sooner. My client has chosen to leave his ash standing in that spirit. That's really putting your money where your beliefs are, and I have to respect that.